Well, things just got wild in Philadelphia, as the Myles Garrett trade drama just got a major news drop that could come at the expense of the Birds' top free agent. Plus, Josh Sweat makes his case to stay in Philly, and the Eagles' new QB coach has the entire city a bit surprised. I'm Thomas Mott. This is the Thomas Mott Show. There's been literally no break in the action for the Birds offseason. This is Friday brought some key trade news to further ignite the Myles Garrett rumors, some interesting NFL Combine meetings, and a brand new coach in Scott Loeffler officially being announced as the Birds' new quarterback coach in Philly. Now your first question should be, who the heck is Scott Loeffler? And well, buckle up, he's got a very long and very interesting resume. First though, Jalyx Hunt sent myself and Josh Davis yesterday 2 signed number 58 Jalyx Hunt jerseys to give away on the channel to go with the signed Zack Baun helmet I'm giving away once I hit 90K subs on here. Although I think I'm going to give away the Jalyx Hunt jerseys sometime next week. If you want to get in on it though, go ahead and subscribe, drop a like, leave a comment down below. Pretty sick jersey, and it's signed by the rookie Super Bowl champion himself. Now back to Loeffler, and his resume, let me tell you, is very interesting, starting off as a quarterback at Michigan a very long time ago before becoming the Detroit Lions quarterback for 1 year back in 2008. And after that brief stint in the National Football League, he spent time all over college football. Stops at Florida as a QB coach, then OC at Temple, Auburn, Virginia Tech, and Boston College, before landing as the Bowling Green head coach in 2019, where he stayed up until, I guess, yesterday when he was hired by the Philadelphia Eagles. And I'll be honest, this hire was completely out of left field. 0 people had Scott Loeffler as a potential QB candidate, someone with very little NFL experience, now coming to be really Jalen Hurts' right-hand man. So why him? Well, all I can do is speculate, but for one, I think Philadelphia wanted to bring in a fresh voice into the offense following the Kevin Patullo hiring. Patullo, of course, was an internal hire and is expected to bring back much of the same from the 2024 Super Bowl offense. Not a bad thing, but still much of the same. Loeffler, though, will hopefully act as kind of a counterbalance to make sure the Birds' offense continues to evolve going forward. And Loeffler has worked with a variety of different quarterback styles, including Tom Brady, Tim Tebow, Chad Henne, and Logan Thomas. But I think the real kicker here is Loeffler's love of the up-tempo offenses with plenty of pre-snap motion. Motion with tempo, as we know, has been Jalen Hurts' bread and butter, so bringing in even more of that sounds like a pretty good thing to me. Oh, and he's also a very fiery guy. He's going to be very loud on the sidelines, and once got ejected in a college football game for getting 2 unsportsmanlike penalties as a head coach. But as I said, I have no clue if this guy's going to be good or not. Bowling Green is not necessarily a college football power, although they played Penn State pretty well this previous season, but it's not like they're bringing in the OC at Alabama or the OC at Texas. This is the Bowling Green head coach to be the quarterback coach in the NFL, and at this point, you just hope it's the right move, and you kind of wait and see. You also hope Jalen Hurts approves. No idea if they asked him or not, but that connection is going to be key to a successful offense in 2025. Oh, one other little tie here. One of the top tight end prospects in this year's draft is Harold Fannin, who happened to play, wait for it, at Bowling Green under Loeffler, and not only dominated this year's Senior Bowl, but is said to be the faster version of Antonio Gates, if you believe that. So, do with that information as you will, but the Birds are reportedly interested in a tight end in the draft, and so maybe the one from Bowling Green, whose coach is now on the Eagles, makes the most sense. Now, staying with the draft, the NFL Combine obviously is still going on while you're watching this show right now. I always say take Combine official interviews with a grain of salt, but the recent one announced by Philadelphia is at least somewhat interesting. Texas running back Jaden Blue officially said he had a formal interview with the Birds, and he's widely considered the fastest man in this year's draft. We're talking 4.1, 4.2, it's gonna be really quick. With Kenny G likely going elsewhere in free agency, just simply keep an eye on the Texas Speedster as a potential pick come late April. Now, of course, the big news of the weekend, again, has to be Myles Garrett, who we talked a lot about on this channel, but come on, the NFL media can't stop connecting him to Philadelphia, as the new report out of Cleveland did confirm on Friday that Garrett is, quote, unwilling to negotiate a contract extension with the organization, as his agents have apparently slammed the door shut on discussions. Obviously, further confirming, he's definitely going to be traded. And now you take that news and pair it with the usually pretty accurate Athletics Diana Russini report on Friday that Garrett in Philadelphia is a very real thing and could be happening soon.
Here's what some people are saying right now, that Howie's willing to move on from some of these guys because he's looking to make a big swing. And that big swing would be for Myles Garrett. Some of these guys that you think are a sure thing may not be sure things to return to Philly.
I would rather have Myles Garrett than Zack Baun.
Put it past Howie Roseman going after Myles Garrett.
Absolutely
no way.
Not.
Continue to build and build and build in the area that got them to the Super Bowl and in the Super Bowl's past, which is
Jalen
to continue with
and Myles Garrett.
Could you imagine that? Wow.
Okay, another media person saying Garrett and the Eagles, Diana Russini definitely in the know. Although I don't know about you guys, but the idea of getting Garrett at the cost of some surefire free agents coming back to Philadelphia has me a little bit concerned. Now, my hope is she was talking about, let's say, Josh Sweat and Milton Williams, who, of course, we in Philadelphia know are not going to go ahead and return, but maybe the rest of the NFL doesn't know that, and so that's the casualty of getting Myles Garrett is losing those two. But I think the real concern here is that it's actually Zack Baun who she's talking about, as most people have said that's going to be the surefire, including myself, re-signing Philadelphia is going to do this offseason. And listen, I want Garrett. I've said it for weeks. Him, Jalen Carter together, that's going to be incredible. But at the cost of losing Baun, I don't know. What do you guys think? Like, obviously, Garrett is a way more impactful player. There's no denying that. But there is something about Baun's story, what he did in Philadelphia, his elite play that he's brought to the linebacker room that really makes me want to keep him. And again, no clue if Diana Russini meant Zack Baun, or like I said, Milton Williams or Josh Sweat. I just hope she's right about Garrett and wrong about Baun. I really want your thoughts down below on this. Also, just because the drama literally won't stop in terms of the edge rusher mix, look what Josh Sweat commented on this IG post just yesterday that said Sweat expects to part ways with the Eagles this season, to which he put, what, 3 question marks? Okay, so is he not leaving? Well, who knows at this point, but as I said before, all pre-free agency news must be taken with a grain of salt if you didn't know that already. I just report the news. Honestly, I have no clue what to make of all this. Like, in the end, it's like, okay, we keep hearing Myles Garrett to Philadelphia. That makes sense. But now, is it Myles Garrett to Philadelphia? Does Josh Sweat actually want to come back? Does it cost us Zack Baun to do it? I don't know. All I do know is that it makes for fun shows and fun debate topics like myself and Josh Davis did during our weekly live show, and he's a little more out on Myles Garrett than I am. Take a listen. And you mentioned Myles Garrett, Josh. There was you call it breaking news over the course of the past 30 minutes saying that Myles Garrett has refused any sort of contract talks with the Cleveland Browns, saying that he is not interested in coming back for any price to Cleveland, which is going to further force his hand and maybe bring the price down a little bit because teams know they have no choice but to trade Myles Garrett. So a lot is going on right now. Hope you're doing well and pumped, to be here on a little Thursday afternoon show.
There we go. Yes. For people that are wondering too, obviously not the normal Wednesday link time, but we did not have the Wednesday link. So scheduling conflicts, all the other stuff, usually it is, but
sure,
occasionally we got some family stuff for me, or just, it's all sorts of stuff over the offseason because it's not as planned and regular. And Thomas, you and I talked about this a number of times on the show, but also offline. It's like there's kind of a mixed bag because during the season, you have a little bit better of an understanding or expectation of, okay, there's going to be press conferences this day. We're going to hear from the coordinators, right. The players are going to practice, get the game prep, all the other stuff. Offseason is like no holds barred, just whatever goes. And so especially as we're leading up to the free agent time period, all this news, all these rumors, everything else, people see it on your screen there. There's one of the many tweets that came out, but that is the Myles Garrett not open to the contract extension talks. You find it a little bit comical, I suppose, that Andrew Berry, he's got to go up there and say what he did. So I understand that. The Browns GM, for anyone who did not see, you got to go up there and face the music, and you know that you're going to get asked that by the media of, hey, what about Myles Garrett? But when he's made it so blatantly obvious, like, I really don't want to be there, I don't necessarily know that the best thing for the Cleveland Browns, even though they argue that, and Andrew Berry said it, is for Myles Garrett to be on this team because he's not open to that extension, and, at least get what you can for him now. Cleveland is an absolute mess as it is, but it feels like even if he's not going to go to Philly, and we can get into this if we want to, it does not feel very likely that he's going to remain with Cleveland. Let's just say that. I think a lot of people are understanding, but especially the way this thing's transpiring does not feel very likely.
Doesn't feel like very, very likely at all. He's definitely leaving. I mean, it gets to a point in a lot of these superstar NFL careers, especially it feels like defensive players, that the loyalty really starts to die when you've poured your entire career into one organization that's never really won anything. Like what? They probably won 1, maybe 2 playoff games throughout Myles Garrett's entire tenure, and the guy's 29 years old. So he's at the point where he wants to sign with a contender. And I do think that is going to help Philadelphia in their ability to sign him, because as you look at the other suitors, right, there are plenty of teams that could throw a lot of money and a lot of draft picks to Cleveland's way, right? I mean, you could talk about the New England Patriots potentially being a playoff caliber team this coming season because they're going to draft Travis Hunter, and we all like their quarterback in year 2. They also have a bunch of money, but are they going to go win a Super Bowl in 2025? The answer is obviously no. Washington is a very serious threat. The Commanders will make a huge run. We almost guarantee that. It seems like the reporting is out there. They want to make a run at Myles Garrett. But if you're Myles Garrett, are you sure the Commanders are ready to win a Super Bowl in 2025? And that's not disrespecting any part of the Washington Commanders. They're a great football team. but it's the exact same thing that we saw with the Houston Texans this past year. CJ Stroud going into year 2 was supposed to be the guy, Josh. I mean, he was like the sexy kind of pick there. Obviously, Lamar and Josh Allen were also there to dethrone Patrick Mahomes, but it was like, wow, they got Stephon Diggs. They went out and got Joe Mixon. They got all these edge rushers, and Houston Texans took a massive step back. They won a playoff game, but still were nowhere near the juggernaut team, the big threat everyone thought they would be in the AFC. And if I'm Myles Garrett, I would consider that with the Washington Commanders. You know Philadelphia is ready to run it back again. Even when they lose Josh Sweat and Milton Williams, and we talk about Zack Baun, we think he's going to stay, they're ready to run it back. And if you really want to go play in meaningful NFC Championship games and Super Bowls, Philadelphia might be one of the few destinations, A, that can afford you, and B, also get you to where you want to go.
That's ultimately what it comes down to, is like, how much do you want to win? You make valid case, valid point. Everyone understands, hey, Commanders got probably about the best turnaround as you possibly can from a public image from like one year to the next. People that watched or saw the NFLPA report cards and everything else for teams that go out there. But, you go from that standpoint, sure, hey, there's lots of opportunity. But look at the NFC, and we saw this obviously with the Super Bowl run, but you see this team here. If Myles Garrett is willing to or wanting to win a championship, and depending on, how much he's willing to structure a contract, maybe take a little bit of a pay, I don't know, just slightly less than what he could get market value there. It can certainly help his opportunity. But at the same time, there's definitely, I think, teams out there that would be willing to pay him exactly what he's asking and still make the move. And as you're talking about their Commanders, do the Eagles, I know the report from Jeremy Fowler a couple days ago, or like the Eagles might be a team to kind of snake the Commanders if they feel like they're getting close to acquiring Myles Garrett. I don't necessarily discredit. I mean, Jeremy Fowler's great reporting. I don't discredit that he's hearing it. But to me, I'm going, I don't necessarily know if it's like a full blown, because the Commanders are going to get him now we're going to go all in and sell resources. Like, to me, it's more of those, and I think a lot of us understand, is like, just at least bump the price up. Are you going to fully go for him? I think that has to already be made up now. Like the mind has to be made up. If there is an opportunity and the Browns are legit going to trade him at some point, if Andrew Berry folds and says, all right, we can't do anything here, so we're going to trade him. Your mind has to be made up now. Are you going to do it or not? Otherwise, let's just go ahead and go future point, take it with the youth and move in that direction, which is where I feel like they're going. And Howie's not going to completely put all of his cards on the table, but I can't envision that. So for the 52% of people, based on the poll that I put up there, is Myles Garrett returning to Philly or not? I'm with the 52%, but it's very split, obviously.
It's very split. No, okay. There is obviously a scenario where Philadelphia gets outbid or truly doesn't want Myles Garrett. Maybe they're wanting to drive the price up, as many people have talked about. But I do think they're making phone calls and they're going to try. Howie Roseman fully understands what he has in the Eagles' defensive line, and he realizes that if you take a premier edge rusher and add him to a defensive line that already features who we both consider, you especially, soon to be one of the premier edge rushers in the National Football League in Nolan Smith, who I think is one of the premier year 2 potential guys to break out this coming season in Jalyx Hunt, along with Moro Ojomo, we both absolutely love going into year 3, plus Jalen Carter, who can probably win Defensive Player of the Year next year, or at least will be considered the greatest defensive player in the entire National Football League. Adding in another edge rusher makes this defense unstoppable. It really does. I don't know how you defend it. And whether it's Myles Garrett, whether it's trading up in the draft and getting somebody they believe can be a future superstar, or, talked about on my show, dropped a couple hours ago, Harold Landry, the Tennessee Titans, I do think Howie Roseman's going to pull the trigger on one of these guys. And it's not going to surprise me whether it's Garrett, Landry, a draft pick, or elsewhere. I do feel like he's going to try and make an upgrade, though.
Yeah, I agree. I'm with you there. I do think that he loves the defensive line. He loves the trenches, really, to begin with, both sides, offensive line, defensive line. But there's too much there that he said it's his how did he phrase it in the press conference? I'm trying to remember exactly his wording. It was basically like talking about
it's never
something
gonna
he can't help himself, So that sense of he's going to look at it. We played it here in the open clip of him talking about there's anybody available they're going to go look at. I don't think, and I'll just go ahead and put this out there. I see people in the comments. We were going to get to this eventually, but I'll just go ahead and go here now. I don't think that Josh Sweat and Milton Williams are returning.
Nope.
Now, there are people that would believe this because, you never know. You see these posts all the time, and who knows. But Josh Sweat post based on, Jeremy Fowler's report, and somebody put this on Instagram, and I'm scrolling down here to Sweaty's comment. There you go. So Sweaty's comment back to it saying, Josh Sweat expected to part ways with the Eagles this offseason. All he does is comment 3 question marks. Now, people are going to take that and run with it and say, hey, you know, this is Josh Sweat for sure not going.
Interesting.
It doesn't mean one way or the other. Now, I can understand, like, hey, it's not impossible because we had reports of he's going to move on last offseason and then he comes back and restructure and everything. So similarly to these other guys, like a Myles Garrett, for example, who says, no, I want to win a championship. You know what? Hey, Sweaty may be in that same scenario. He may say, you know what? I am willing to take a little bit of a discount and make things work because I want to be in Philly long term. It's not impossible.
It's not impossible.
For him to say that or to put that out there on social media, all right, that's one thing. But at the same time, there's a very much feel towards, as a lot of people are getting these reports, and Jeremy Fowler, again, one of the ones that has been accurate for a number of those and following the team closely. I think it's more so the feel of what he's getting from other teams and what they're going to be willing to offer Sweat in free agency. So unless this is totally, again, Sweat take a discount deal, I don't know. But it is, at least nonetheless, because we're in the offseason and there's just random things that pop up in rumors. Hey, who knows what to say about the 3 question marks from Josh Sweat?
I will say I'm very interested in Harold Landry because as I look at Josh Sweat, I had this thought a couple days ago. And I like Josh Sweat. If Josh Sweat wanted to do exactly what you just said, take a discount, come back to Philadelphia, I think every Eagle fan would take him. But we've also seen Josh Sweat in Philadelphia his entire career, and he's never really been a double-digit sack guy. I think 1 year he had 10.5, which was, I think, 2 years ago. He's hovered around 6, 7, 8, 9. That's kind of his bread and butter, which is still fantastic. If you have a 9-sack guy here and a 9-sack guy over there, and Jalen Carter's getting 6 or 7 in the middle, like, come on, this is all great. But I wonder if the Eagles, and especially Vic Fangio, watched Josh Sweat and went, you know, it's really good. He obviously plays well in the scheme, and a lot of guys play great next to Jalen Carter. But what if we actually just upgraded a little bit? And I kind of view Harold Landry as an upgrade. Talk about a guy who's played on a much worse football team. I know he's had some pretty good defensive players, D tackles next to him throughout his career, but Tennessee's lost 35 games in the past 3 seasons combined. Like he's not playing on world-beating defenses, yet he's still getting double-digit sacks every single year. And I think right at that age where he's ready for one final decent-sized contract. And I wonder if the Eagles view Josh Sweat as like, what if we get 10% better than Josh Sweat? How much better does that make the defensive line overall? And if they truly believe that, which we don't know, but just a guess, then they could go out and pull the trigger on a Harold Landry for like a 3rd or a 4th round draft pick, make the upgrade, pay him very similar, maybe a little more, a little less here and there. And if they're 10% better, how much better does that make the defense overall? I think it makes them pretty darn good. So the beauty of this whole thing, Josh, is we have had offseason in Philadelphia where, it's like, we need to plug this little hole. We also really need to get a linebacker. Well, we need a right tackle. There have been plenty of off seasons, almost every single year in Philadelphia, where you have a ton of needs. Philadelphia has no needs. Philadelphia could lose, literally, think about this. They could lose everybody but Zack Baun, because you and I both think Zack Baun is pretty irreplaceable, even though you could argue in a scheme, you bring back Oren Burks, you have a healthy Nakobe Dean, and maybe it'd be okay. But you and I would both say, we got to keep Zack Baun. They could lose everybody but Zack Baun. And they are still the best roster in the NFC. And it's not that close at all. Yeah. I mean, literally. Because even if you lost Mekhi Becton, who you and I want to bring back, Tyler Steen can plug and play right in there. He did it a lot of games this past season. That's the beauty of where we're at. Garrett, you talk about Landry, Josh Sweat, all these people it's icing on the cake to the end of a season that resulted in a Super Bowl. And yet we could still just reload a little more and go try and get another one in 2025.
Yep. And there's still the draft coming up too, and sometimes people say,
I forget that, by the way. Like, I forget that we could go get 2 more starters in round 1 and 2. And it's like, holy cow.
Well, because
I forget that.
Because, and again, I think other people understand this as well. I'm going to get to the super chats too. We see you guys. Appreciate that here in just a second. But yeah, it doesn't always happen. You don't always draft a guy in 1st round, 2nd round, and 3rd round, even have them starting or playing very significant snaps in a Super Bowl, let alone, just playoffs or late in the season. But that's what this team has done, and the way that they've been able to help players improve, the positional coaches, the development. It's been night and day difference. So yeah, I'm with you. It's the same thing for the roster. We're not trying to get like too far ahead of myself here, but it's like this team is a different feeling, a different vibe, and it's good. Let's just say this. It's good what happened to the Eagles in 2018. What happened after winning the Super Bowl is a really good thing because Howie Roseman has spoken about it. He understands what you're going to go through. He understands his shortfalls and the things that he did or did not do in that instance where it's like, you know what? Hey, now you come off of a Super Bowl win. You've been here. You've done that. And you have youth on the roster and a defense that's the youngest in the league, number 1 defense in the league. You're going to lose some pieces, sure. But again, as you're talking about, Thomas, there's ways to reload, whether it is the free agency, whether it's guys who want to win a championship because they see this is the point, right? Like you look at other dynasties, and again, I know we got a ways to go. We just don't get ahead of ourselves here. But still, you look at squads like that and you go, hey, there's a reason that the Chiefs had the long run that they had. There's a reason the Patriots had the multiple runs that they had. There's a certain point where you attract a veteran type player who has made all the money that they need or made plenty and said, you know what, I'll short, a little bit and say, I'll just take some on advertising deals. I want some for my legacy. We got Saquon here. Not that he really had to take a discount. The Giants were just idiotic for that one. So, but it's still a much bigger impact. And so I think you're right on. We'll see which the obvious moves that they do. But Anthony here, before I get to the other first super chats, reminder, I was trying to think of the exact comment or the exact post, but he said, last offseason, Josh Sweat said goodbye to Eagles fans on social media. We saw how that ended.
I forgot about that. That's right. He was like for sure gone.
Yeah, we were like that was a given. You see him make the case. You're like, well, he will for sure not be here. And then, I don't know, the Hassan Reddick situation, that might have changed things there. But if it works out in the same sense of last year, then maybe Sweaty's gone. So even though he's questioning if he is actually gone. All right, get to these super chats. Appreciate you guys. Fredo with the 2 said he's coming to us, y'all. This was earlier. I apologize, but he was talking about Myles Garrett. There's 58% of people now in the poll saying no. So I'm with the no.
Wow. Wow. I think the fear, and again, quick thought. I think the fear is the price. I don't know if the price is going to be as big as people think. I think if I asked even you, Josh, and I would consider you're more of a skeptic on the Myles Garrett thing and you don't want to overpay.
For sure.
You would do 32 overall plus, let's say, the 2026 third for Myles Garrett right now, right? Just that.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
I think a lot of people think the sticker price is 2 first plus something else. 2 first and a second, 2 first and a third. Maybe, but I don't think it's a guarantee. I think 1 first for sure, because these sort of trades, when people demand to get out of there, like we saw Myles Garrett do today, it tends to drive the price down a little bit more. And for a 29-year-old edge rusher, he's not 24, a 1 first and a third would be a lot more easy to swallow than 2 first. I think most Eagle fans are worried about it being 2.
Yeah, I would absolutely, because honestly, especially if you look at that, you say, hey, it's going to be, and it's all hypotheticals, but if it's a 32 this year and a third round next year, I mean, that's basically just this year's first, which is almost like a second because, you're all the way back to 32 because you're going to get comp picks, right? Because we have Milton Williams and Josh Sweat who have been projected, we'll see, but like a third and a fourth. So in that instance, you go, okay, well, we lose one, but you replenish with the Myles Garrett there. So I mean, I would absolutely sign up for that. That'll be the curious part. It really comes down to, is Washington that team that overpays? Is New England, even though they're not the contender, does Myles Garrett want to go there and all that? But we'll see. It might be later, as people have brought up on a number of occasions. It does make sense financially for Cleveland to trade him as a post-June 1st. So, it might drag out a little bit more, and then that becomes a little bit more of an issue of too, like, okay, but what about draft picks and compensation? Maybe it's later years. You mess with that a little bit, but at some point, if Cleveland's not getting, like, if the deals continue to just kind of fall a little bit worse and worse and worse because they're holding on to him and not taking advantage, I mean, they might have to just pull the trigger and say, you know what, it's going to be a loss either way. They've done so many things that have been negative in terms of signings and Deshaun Watson and all the guaranteed money and the cap hell that they're in. Yeah. They might just have to punt it and say, forget about it. We'll take whatever we can. And I don't know. I'm still, percentage-wise, 10%, 15% of a Myles Garrett. I think I've learned from the Saquon Barkley, as Anthony has, where he was saying 0.0%, but it still feels unlikely.
Now, of course, my promise to you has always been we'll be the first channels live whenever the Eagles make a move. And so I'm hoping that Zack Baun happens pre-NFL free agency, so hopefully next week. Be sure to subscribe because we'll go live the second that happens. If it doesn't, though, then we start to get a little nervous and continue to wait for Myles Garrett, which, of course, will be live first for that as well. That's our promise to you. I'm Thomas Mott, hanging out here on a weekend. Enjoy the rest of the NFL Combine, and get ready. Next week is going to be nuts. This has been the Thomas Mott Show.